What's up, guys? Chrissy Science here, and today we're going to talk about the 43 U.S. presidents. You might think that there are 44 U.S. presidents, but Grover Cleveland had 2 non-consecutive terms. So, let's start by naming all the U.S. presidents and talking about them. So let's go. Number 1, George Washington. George Washington was a Virginian planter. Along with many other U.S. presidents, he was a Virginian. And George Washington not only led America to freedom, but was a little awkward in his ways. For example, George Washington was really poor when he grew up in Virginia, but when he married his wife, he became filthy rich. He's even the richest president of all time, even today. But there's a catch. Washington owned the most slaves of any president. Might not think so, but I cannot tell a lie. It's true. Speaking of I cannot tell a lie, George Washington really never cut down a cherry tree. That was a little made up by a writer who tried to make him look good. But he never really cut a cherry tree. He never even cut a tree. And yeah, that's why George Washington. George Washington was also the British general in England's French War. So although when America was fighting England, the military of America was a bunch of ragamuffins, you could say. But let's relate this for football. You could see America's soldiers against England were just football players who just learned to play football. But they had Tom Brady, which was George Washington. Washington led a bunch of poor farmers, some of them even cooks who just began to fight. He led them into victory into the United States of America. That's why some people say he's the greatest president. And George Washington never really wanted to become president because when he was done with his service, he went back to Virginia. But people said his service wasn't done yet, and he became the first U.S. president. At first, George Washington didn't want a vice president. He didn't like partnership. But John Adams really wanted to be his vice president. So John Adams said this, "Come on, you need a vice president." And he proved it wrong because when Washington became president, he was fathering a newborn nation. And while he was doing that, there were no laws, to be honest. No laws in the United States. They had to do something, and he needed a vice president to help him. So finally he agreed on it, and then when Adams was his VP, Adams wanted to call George Washington his Excellency. They want people to call him not his Excellency. They want people to call him his Roundtity. They want people to call him that. But George Washington didn't really like that idea. He preferred Mr. President. And that's why we still call people Mr. President today. It was George Washington's idea. Although there's no White House at the time, George Washington did get to pick the location for the next president, John Adams. Which brings us to the next president, John Adams. So John Adams was the second U.S. president. He was very stubborn. Really stubborn. Although he did help draft the Declaration of Independence with Thomas Jefferson, he was very stubborn and argued a lot. His wife Abigail even had to admit he was stubborn. So when he became president, America owed so much debts to the French. Why? Because the French helped them win the Revolutionary War. If it wasn't for them, we would still be part of England. So America owed debt to French, but so much dollars of debt. $1 in America is a lot of money, $10 for like if you had $10, you could consider yourself a millionaire today. So they owed so much money, and the U.S. government didn't really have enough. Congress didn't have enough money, so French had an attack on America. It was a war that was never really declared, which meant no one ever said this: "We're going to war." They just fought. So they even called it the quasi-war, and no one really wanted a quasi-war. No one did. Even Adams' cabinet never wanted it. But Adams was his own man, you could say, and he just did it. So that's why people was really upset about Adams. And if you look at today, the greatest U.S. presidents, he will not be on the list. And Adams, he had a partnership with Thomas Jefferson. Adams was a Federalist. Also Thomas Jefferson. Adams was a Federalist. His vice president, Thomas Jefferson, was a Democratic Republican. And he was his vice president. Adams was the only president to have a vice president from the opposing party. Why did that happen? Because at the time, the rules were this: whoever won first would be president. Whoever won second would be vice president. However, who won first was Adams, and he was a Federalist. Who won second was Jefferson, a Democratic Republican. And when they came together, it was not pretty. Because they had a lot of fights, because they were in different parties, So, a lot of fights. Adams was the only person to have a different successor from the opposing party, as I mentioned earlier. But Lincoln did have a vice president from the opposing party, but he had two though. One of them was not from the opposing party. So yeah. So as I said, Adams, he wasn't really the best president. His vice president had lots of fights with him. His vice president was Thomas Jefferson, which really brings us to the next president, number 3, Thomas Jefferson. It's pretty funny how Washington has a vice president, President was Adams. Adams was a good president, and his vice president was Jefferson. Now here we are at Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson was very wealthy. He was a writer. He wrote the Declaration of Independence for crying out loud. And he served as Secretary of State of George Washington and as 50th Vice President as Adams' successor. That was not pretty, as I mentioned. So, Thomas Jefferson, yes, he was rich. He was on a $2 bill. Let's pause for a moment. Is there a $2 bill? Well, today there is not a $2 bill. Why? Well, they banned it. Because people don't really need $2 bills in currency anymore. If you bought something, it's usually for like maybe $27. A $2 bill cannot fit equally into 27. It's not divisible by it. So that's why they just banished it. But they put him on the $2 bill because he was so great. Jefferson he made the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of America. It increased it, which brought Louisiana. They named Louisiana after the French king at the time, King Louis. But before him, King Louis, which was their ally, you could say. But not talk about him, but. So Jefferson made the Louisiana Purchase, and he gave us Louisiana, named after King Louis III. So, also, to even talk about that, Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark to the west to explore the western area. But the British did this. Oh no, don't go west. There's Native Americans there, they're surely gonna attack you. They did attack them, which brings us to the most future.